What sticks with me from September 11, 2001 isn't just the bravery, though there was so much of it. It's the devastating realization that even all that courage wasn't enough.
Right.
People ran toward danger police, firefighters, EMS, ordinary folks, but the system around them just collapsed.
Yeah. Radios went silent. Agencies couldn't talk to each other, couldn't share critical information, and the cost.
Yeah.
It was truly horrifying.
It's a really sobering image, isn't it?
It is, and it lays bare a painful truth. Emergencies don't wait for us to figure out how to work together. They don't pause while we sort out who's in charge.
No, they don't.
When lives are actually on the line, collaboration isn't just, nice to have. It's fundamental. It can be the difference between saving people and losing them.
That's exactly why we're diving into this. Our mission today is really to explore why this idea of public safety integration isn't just a good idea, but absolutely essential. And we're going to use some real-world tragedies as, stark teachers. We're pulling insights from Christen Shea's book, Integrated Response, Redefining Public Safety in a Modern Age. It really captures her life's work trying to strengthen public safety through collaboration.
And Christen Shea, she's not just writing from an ivory tower, right? Her background is incredibly relevant. It really grounds her insights. She started in criminal justice back in 1994, believe it or not, as a file clerk while still in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, inspired by her father, who was a law enforcement major. Since then, she's done patrol, investigations, got promoted to sergeant in 2003. She even earned the Purple Heart and Meritorious Service Medals.
So real frontline experience.
Absolutely. And now, as program director of criminal justice at Polk State College, she connects that theory and practice. She's known for this no-nonsense teaching style, really challenging people to, break down those silos and build real partnerships.
Okay, so if we're going to really understand this integration idea, we need a framework. And Shea offers this brilliant metaphor. Public safety integration is like a spiderweb.
I like.
Yeah, it's not just about first responders showing up at the same place at the same time during a crisis.
Yeah.
It means law enforcement, fire, EMS, emergency managers, community leaders, everyone involved. They're already connected.
So they've trained together, planned together.
Exactly. Build trust before disaster hits. The idea is pretty simple. A single thread in that web might snap, right?
Yeah.
But multiple woven strands create a network that can hold even under immense pressure.
And that spiderweb, that framework, it hinges on 3 absolutely essential strands. These are what we'll be looking at today through these case studies.
Okay.
First, there's cross-scale coordination. This is basically about the smooth flow of communication and action between local teams, state agencies, federal partners, both side to side, across jurisdictions, and up and down the chain of command.
And when that fails?
Well, the evidence is tragically clear. Delays kill. It's that simple.
Okay, strand 1, coordination. What's next?
Second is stakeholder engagement. This means actively including critical resources from outside the traditional first responder roles.
So not just police and fire.
Right. Think hospitals, schools, utility companies, nonprofits, even private businesses like, say, Home Depot or Walmart. The source makes a really impactful analogy here. Leaving them out of your plan is like trying to put out a house fire with a garden hose.
That paints a picture. Okay, coordination, stakeholders.
Yeah.
What's the third strand?
And the third, which is often overlooked but so crucial, is community involvement.
The public themselves.
Exactly. Recognizing that real safety starts with the people who know their neighborhood best residents, community groups, local organizations. When they're part of the plan, they become, potentially, your greatest asset, not just another problem to manage during a crisis.
It's about seeing the community as part of the solution.
Precisely.
Historically, it wasn't always like this.
Yeah.
Public safety agencies often operated, in silos. Police handled crime, fire dealt with fires, EMS handled injuries.
Right, separate lanes.
Yeah, and when something big happened, the sort of unspoken assumption was they'd just figure it out on scene.
Which, as we now know,
Proved wrong and deadly, time and time again. Now, there were rare exceptions, like Grosse Pointe Shores, Michigan. They actually merged police and fire way back in 1911. Visionary, really.
wow, 1911.
But for most places, it really took tragedy, devastating tragedy, to expose those cracks and force the realization that integration has to be planned, trained, and tested before the sirens ever start wailing.
And that's the journey we're about to take. We're going to walk through some really tough but essential case studies, starting with the MOV bombing in Philly, then Hurricane Andrew, the World Trade Center attacks, Oklahoma City, and ultimately 9/11.
These aren't just history lessons.
No, not at all. They're like grim blueprints of what not to do. They show exactly what happens when those spiderweb strands break, when communication collapses, coordination vanishes, or, critical partners are just left out in the cold.
Okay, let's start with maybe one of the most shocking examples of this kind of breakdown. The 1985 Mavie bombing in Philadelphia.
Right. May 13th, 1985. City officials tried to forcibly remove members of the MOVE group from their row house in West Philadelphia. Negotiations failed, and things escalated quickly.
Became a huge tactical operation, right? Over 500 police, armored vehicles, SWAT.
Yeah, and then as the standoff dragged on, law enforcement made this just astonishing decision to drop an explosive device onto the house from a helicopter.
From a helicopter. And the failure here, it just cascaded, didn't it?
It really did. The explosion ignited a fire, obviously, but the fire crews who were literally standing right there ready to go.
They were told to wait.
They were ordered by police commanders to hold off on putting it out. There was no unified command, no shared strategy. Nobody had planned for this.
And the result?
By the time the fire was finally extinguished, 61 homes in that neighborhood were gone, destroyed. 11 people dead, including 5 children, and over 250 residents suddenly homeless.
It wasn't just poor communication then. It sounds like a total collapse of that first strand cross-scale coordination.
Absolutely. Police, fire, city leadership, they were operating like completely separate armies. Police decided on the bomb, fire wasn't consulted, then the fire starts, and police commanders who had zero authority over fire ops ordered the firefighters to let it burn.
Just chaos, because there was no clear command structure.
Exactly. Each department making life or death calls in a vacuum.
And what about the other strands? Stakeholder engagement.
Catastrophic failure there, too. The city basically ignored anyone who might have helped de-escalate. Crisis negotiators, mental health experts, community mediators, people with actual experience in these tense situations never consulted.
So it just stayed locked in this military assault mode.
Pretty much. Missed every off-ramp for a potentially peaceful resolution.
And the community involvement aspect? Devastating is the only word.
It really is. The surrounding neighborhood was treated as, well, expendable. These were residents who'd complained about Mavie for years, right? But they got no warning, no evacuation orders, nothing.
People found out their homes were on fire just by looking out the window.
Can you imagine? The very response meant to protect the public ended up destroying a community.
It's just a complete breakdown of the idea that public safety serves the public.
It really makes you think, what happens when agencies literally fight each other while a neighborhood burns? It shows integration isn't just about, efficiency. It's about making sure the people we're supposed to protect don't become casualties of our own dysfunction.
That's a chilling thought. And it makes you wonder how these same patterns might show up differently, like you said, maybe in a natural disaster.
Exactly. Which brings us to Hurricane Andrew in 1992. It ripped through South Florida, Category 5 winds over 165 miles per hour, just flattened neighborhoods.
Yeah, I remember the images.
Yeah?
25,000 homes destroyed, hundreds of thousands displaced, billions in damage.
Over $25 billion, yeah. But what really shocked people was the aftermath. The response itself felt like a second disaster.
Help was just agonizingly slow to arrive.
Painfully slow. Federal resources took days. Shelters were overwhelmed almost immediately. You had families sleeping in cars, on sidewalks, amidst all that wreckage. For so many, the days after the storm were just as bad, if not worse, because the systems failed them.
So again, that cross-scale coordination piece just unraveled.
Completely. Local, state, federal agencies, they just weren't working from the same playbook. There were big leadership squabbles over who was responsible, who paid for what.
Bureaucracy getting in the way.
Classic bureaucratic gridlock, slowing everything down. Red tape over reimbursements held up critical supplies. By the time coordinated help really kicked in, communities had gone days without basics like water, food, security. Just no pre-positioned strategy, no clear leader across the different levels.
And stakeholder engagement, where outside resources brought in effectively.
That was another major miss. Think about businesses like Home Depot or Walmart, huge stockpiles, amazing logistics, local contractors, utility companies ready to help.
But they weren't looped in early.
Nope, not included in the early efforts. Hospitals were scrambling for backup power, medical transport. The official response just ignored this huge pool of available resources in the private sector.
And community involvement, the local groups.
Same story. Neighborhood groups, churches, local nonprofits largely left out of the initial planning and response. And these are the folks who knew exactly where the most vulnerable people were.
They have the trust, the local knowledge.
Right. They could have guided responders to seniors trapped in homes, families in damaged shelters. Instead, confusion and delays left people trying to manage on their own.
So Andrew really exposed a system that was just fragmented, unprepared.
Deeply fragmented, fundamentally unprepared. It forced huge changes in disaster management, thank goodness, but at a staggering cost, both human and financial.
It really proves that you can see a disaster coming miles away, literally, and still fail if you haven't built those integrated systems beforehand.
Absolutely. Today's emergency managers know they need Walmart, Home Depot, community orgs at the planning table. Andrew taught us the hard way that integration isn't something you figure out during the crisis. You build it during the calm.
The lessons just keep piling up, sadly. Let's shift to the World Trade Center bombing in 1993, February 26th, that massive truck bomb in the parking garage.
Yeah, 1,500 pounds. Killed 6, injured over 1,000, blew a huge crater, plunged 50,000 people into darkness and smoke. A terrifying evacuation.
And it exposed some really dangerous gaps in preparedness, didn't it? Gaps that unfortunately became relevant again later.
Frighteningly relevant. What really stands out in 93, again, is cross-scale coordination or the lack of it. You had FDNY, NYPD, Port Authority Police, EMS, federal agencies all rushing in.
But no unified command.
No shared command structure, no unified communication plan. Critically, their radios operated on different frequencies. They couldn't talk to each other effectively in real time.
So decisions got delayed.
Severely delayed. Where to stage triage, how to manage evacuation routes, all hampered by those communication gaps.
And stakeholder engagement, the building itself.
Deeply lacking there, too.
Yeah.
Think about the building engineers, the facility staff, the people who actually knew that incredibly complex building layout.
They weren't brought in immediately.
Not integrated right away. EMS teams were scattered. Triage wasn't coordinated. Hospitals weren't fully briefed on what was coming. It undeniably slowed down the rescue and medical response.
And for the people inside, the community involvement piece.
Pretty dire. Office workers got little clear direction. There weren't pre-trained tenant wardens, no coordinated evacuation drills practiced beforehand.
So people were just making life or death decisions on their own?
Terrifyingly, yes. Heading into smoke-filled stairs, finding doors blocked. It really makes you ask, how much safer could people be if the public itself was better integrated into emergency plans?
The 93 bombing, it really did reveal these systemic breakdowns. Communication, planning, coordination.
It was like a dress rehearsal in many ways.
Yeah. A terrible dress rehearsal for 9/11 where, as the sources point out, many of the same failures repeated, but with exponentially worse consequences.
It underscores a brutal lesson, doesn't it? You just can't treat major disasters as on-the-job training. The stakes are too high. Some lessons just cost too much to learn twice.
That's a powerful point. But, okay, not every story is one of complete failure. Let's look at the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, April 19th.
Right. The Murrah Federal Building. Horrific attack, 168 killed, including 19 children, over 680 injured. Deadliest domestic terrorism act at the time. A third of the building just collapsed.
Yet, in the response, there were some signs of improvement, some things that went better.
There were, definitely, particularly in that cross-scale coordination. Local police, fire, EMS, federal agencies, they worked together much more effectively than in some previous incidents.
A unified command was set up quickly.
Yes, established quickly on the ground.
Yeah.
That improved communication and resource flow. Urban search and rescue teams mobilized impressively fast. Leadership roles seemed better defined, so lessons were being learned.
That's encouraging.
It is. But significant challenges still popped up, especially in stakeholder engagement.
Hospitals, for instance.
Predictably overwhelmed. And there weren't really robust plans connecting hospitals across the city to distribute that massive patient load effectively. Mental health services, faith groups, other community partners. Critical resources were brought in late, not part of the initial plan.
And community involvement. I remember seeing images of volunteers rushing to help.
Absolutely heroic outpouring from the public. Donations, supplies, people just showing up wanting to help. But it wasn't organized.
No formal structure.
No formal volunteer management plans, no established neighborhood emergency programs, so all that amazing energy and generosity wasn't fully harnessed. It left gaps that maybe could have been filled.
So Oklahoma City becomes this complex picture. The criminal investigation side was incredibly successful.
Brilliant, really.
Yeah.
Timothy McVeigh arrested quickly, largely thanks to strong law enforcement collaboration.
But the community recovery part struggle.
It did. Catching the bad guys, as vital as it is only part of public safety. The other part is taking care of the people left behind. Hospitals were swamped, mental health support was scattered. It really highlights that true integration has to connect every piece, not just the responders, but the hospitals, the volunteers, the community groups. Everyone needs to know their role before disaster strikes.
Which brings us, finally, to the event that changed everything, September 11th, 2001.
A monumental tragedy. The scale was just unprecedented. Plane crashes into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, Flight 93 down in Pennsylvania, nearly 3,000 lives lost.
And it became devastatingly clear very quickly that the U.S. was just not prepared to handle something like this as a truly unified response.
The cross-scale coordination breakdown was just brutal and widespread. We talked about the radios, firefighters, police, EMS, Port Authority at different frequencies. Couldn't connect.
So many firefighters never got the evacuation order.
Tragically, no. Police helicopters gave the order, but FDNY radios couldn't receive it. And nationally, FAA and NORAD coordination was lacking, delaying fighter jet deployment, just fundamental communication failure at almost every level.
And stakeholder engagement, beyond the first responder.
Also not integrated. Hospitals, public health, transportation, utilities not part of a single cohesive command structure. Organizations wanted to help desperately, but there was no system to plug them in efficiently.
And intelligence.
Critically, intelligence was scattered. The FBI, the CIA, they had pieces of information about the hijackers beforehand. But those dots weren't connected, the warnings weren't shared effectively enough to prevent it.
And for the civilians caught in it, community involvement.
Sadly, that lack was profoundly evident, too. People in the towers had no clear, unified evacuation plan. Some were told to stay put, others to leave, just immense confusion.
Dangerous confusion.
Extremely dangerous. People forced to make impossible choices alone. New York didn't have organized community emergency programs back then to train volunteers, to help neighbors in that kind of unthinkable scenario.
The 9/11 Commission report just laid it bare, didn't it?
Wow.
It wasn't just an attack, it was a profound system failure.
A system so broken that agencies couldn't talk to each other while people were dying. It was a failure of integration so complete, it turned our greatest strength, that willingness to help, into a weakness.
But that catastrophe, it did force change. Massive change.
Sweeping changes. The creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the widespread adoption of the Incident Command System ICS, that standardized framework designed precisely to bring order to chaos. It finally made integration the foundation of survival.
So let's bring it back to that spiderweb idea we started with.
Yeah.
When you look back, Philly burning because police and fire weren't coordinated, Andrew's victims waiting for help because agencies weren't connected, the World Trade Center attacks, both 93 and 01, proving brave responders are crippled by incompatible radios.
It just drills home what happens when those vital strands don't just fray, but completely snap.
That really is the thread connecting all these tragedies, isn't it? These weren't just unavoidable events, they were system failures.
Fundamentally, yes. People died not because help wasn't available somewhere, but because help couldn't get organized, couldn't communicate, couldn't coordinate.
And that's the profound, often invisible truth about integration, right? When it works seamlessly, nobody even notices.
Exactly. It's only when it fails that we see the devastating cost.
But the sacrifice, the lessons learned from these terrible events, they weren't for nothing.
No, absolutely not. Out of these failures came this crucial, hard-won realization. Integration cannot be left to chance. It can't be an afterthought.
It has to be built in.
Meticulously built into every plan, every training drill, every single relationship between agencies, between sectors, with the community, the incident command system you mentioned. It exists precisely because we finally understood that hope isn't a strategy. Good intentions aren't enough.
And that really leads us to a final thought for you listening to this. True public safety integration, it isn't just about the agencies with badges and sirens working together better. It's about recognizing that everyone in a community has a role to play when things go wrong. We've seen the awful cost when communication breaks down, when partners are left out. So maybe consider this. What's your thread in that community spiderweb? How can understanding these past failures empower you, empower all of us, to contribute to a stronger, more integrated future?
Because ultimately, that understanding, that preparedness, that connection, it makes the difference between facing crisis alone and facing it together.